So I guess I should start with the land. When my grandfather came home from World War II, he bought a plot of land and built a house for himself and his wife. They had 6 kids afterwards. The first death I knew of was an aunt the age of 5 or 6 in the late 50s. From there, my grandfather, mother, a second aunt, uncle, and cousin, and my grandmother have all died on the property. My uncle, mother, and grandmother within a 3-year period. There was a house there, but it was torn down when my grandfather was too sick to go upstairs. A trailer was put up sometime in the 80s. When I was young, during the early 2000s, I had to live there with my aunt who later passed on. Weird things would happen in my sleep. Pictures of my old family members would go crooked, sometimes even be moved around. The kitchen faucet would turn on by itself and stay running until morning. The cat would hiss at a wall, just all kinds of unsettling things. My aunt said, "It's old ghosts," and left it at that. There was a tipping point. My aunt and I were watching TV when a large stuffed bear fell to the ground. She grabbed it, put it on the dresser, and went back to watching TV. Then the same stuffed bear flew off the dresser and struck her. We both got real scared. Then we heard a low growl come from behind the dresser and it began to rattle. We both panicked and left the room. My aunt slept in a different room. I slept in the living room. When I woke up, all the family photos were on the floor. The dresser from the night prior was leaning against the bed. My aunt decided to see what was up and decided to talk about it on some forums. An investigator messaged her and wanted to see the trailer. The guy was nice enough, gave us a card and gave me a Ghostbusters toy. My aunt insisted that he look at the trailer by himself. She didn't want a crowded trailer to be a false positive or to get in the way. The investigator called my aunt 4 hours later and said never to bother him. He didn't want to see the trailer, he didn't want to have a team in there, he refused to say exactly why, but did say we needed to get a blessing from a church at least. Incidents continued to happen, although not as bad after the investigator's visit. I moved back in with my dad 3 months later. I never liked visiting that house as much as I loved my aunt. My aunt passed away just before my 17th birthday. I was saddened by the whole thing. She was found in the bedroom, heart attack. Everyone but my mom passed away in that house of a heart attack. Scares me just thinking about it. My uncle moved in there. I'd check on him, but eventually his health declined to a point he was forcibly moved out, and the property which had been in the family was sold to a neighbor. The neighbor tried to rent out the trailer, but tenants just wouldn't stay very long. He tore down the trailer, that's all I know. The property is only 2 blocks from my house, but I avoid walking near it. I'm unsure if it's some irrational fear or the thought of all the lost loved ones, but I always walk around the block and go a different direction. So one evening I was spending the night at my sister's house, where she lived with her husband and young daughter. My sister had been preparing for a move, so she and I were spending a large part of the evening organizing and planning for the move. I remember that it was April 1st, 2016. I remember that only because I thought she had been messing with me when these 2 incidents occurred. Now, my sister and I are horror junkies. We watch scary movies, I read aloud from comment threads in which people recount their paranormal experiences, we look at crazy YouTube videos and pictures all the time. So this particular night wasn't any different. When she was packing some boxes, I was reading aloud from a collection of scary stories that were featured in a gallery on Imager. While I was talking, her Amazon Echo, which needs to hear the command Alexa before doing anything, just started repeating words that I was saying mid-sentence. We would give it the cancel command, and it would go into rest mode, only to pop back on a couple seconds later and start repeating my words back to me again. I stopped reading for a couple of moments to mess with the Echo, thinking there was some sort of interference or something wonky with it, and I had forgotten about the stories that I was reading. I got distracted by tasks around the home, and sometime later my sister asked me to resume my reading while she worked. At this point in the evening, her daughter and her husband had both been asleep for a couple of hours, and her dog was asleep in bed with her husband. I sat down in the kitchen and began reading more stories aloud, and shortly after I began reading, we heard a whistle come from the end of the hall. It was clear as day, and it sounded like someone whistling one long note. Like this. It only lasted a second or two, and my sister and I immediately looked at one another, confused. Her daughter is a playful sort, and she's eerily good at whistling, so we thought she must have gotten up, or that her husband had been trying to call the dog back to bed, but we had heard no other sounds surrounding this at all. There was no television or radio on, the air conditioning was off, there were no other noises in the house except for my own voice. No stirring in the bed, no one getting up and walking around, just the whistle. My sister put down what she was holding and walked down the hallway to check on her family to see if someone had awoken and needed something. She came back down the hallway to the kitchen and said, "I have no idea where that came from. The baby is asleep and Jay hasn't moved since I last checked on him. The dog is even snoring." I looked at the lock screen on my phone and noticed the date. April 1st, 2016, 11:47 p.m. I looked at my sister and said, "No, I'm not falling for this man. There's still 13 minutes left of April Fool's Day. Nice try, though." My sister, who had been halfway down the hallway when she heard me say that, walked back to me and said, "Ruby, if this is an April Fool's joke, it's on me. I don't know what the fuck is going on." That hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt a wave of chills run over my body as it dawned on me that this was really happening. I stood up from my chair, and she and I walked through the house, checking each bedroom, each closet, and we didn't dare check the basement. The knob on the basement door was situated in such a way that the lock was on our side of it, so we simply locked the door and said, "Nope." We continued on our way with packing and planning after that, but we were edgy for the rest of the night. My sister was content to say, "Okay, this house is haunted. I'm leaving it soon," and she went to bed. However, I slept for about a total of 6 minutes that night. As soon as the sun rose, I was able to fall asleep. Hi there. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Let's Not Meet stories. If you have a story that you would like featured on this channel, please email it to readingrubyt@gmail.com, which I'll list in the description below. Please join some friends and I over on the Vextech Labs YouTube and Twitch channels to check us out playing some Injustice 2 and talking smack with one another. Please leave a like, a comment, let me know what you think, and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay safe out there.